are back on the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow. I always look forward to talking to my next guest. She keeps us all informed on what's going on in the world of healthcare reform, grassroots healthcare activism. Laura Packard is, in fact, a healthcare activist. She is also the founder of Healthcare Voices, which is an organization for those of us who have serious and ongoing medical conditions and therefore need to be spoken for and to speak for ourselves. She is also, I believe, the founder of an organization called Get America Covered, which works to make sure that everyone in this country has coverage, and she has the distinction, if I recall correctly, of having once been muted by Donald Trump on Twitter. So without any further ado, Laura, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. And just a note, I'm executive director of Get America Covered. Some great Obama alumni founded it, and so I'm running it today.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that correction. So let's talk about the Supreme Court and the Affordable Care Act, because, it seems, I have the impression that a lot of Republican attorneys general, for example, have made a kind of crusade of trying to eviscerate the Affordable Care Act in the courts. And they've tried to go at it 2 or 3 different ways. When the legislative attempt to do so under Trump failed, it seems like they just redoubled their efforts. But they were rebuffed again last week. So do you mind telling us a little bit about what happened?
Sure. Well, third time is not the charm. In the third major Affordable Care Act case to hit the Supreme Court, they got turned away yet again. And you're exactly right that Republican attorneys general, led by Ken Paxton of Texas, who has his own legal issues to deal with.
Yes,
but they have been fighting the Affordable Care Act any way they can think of. And in this particular case, the Supreme Court said, get out of here.
Yeah, and can we elaborate a little bit on that "get out of here" part? What exactly, except get lost, bug off? What exactly was the nature of the objection and the nature of the rebuff?
Okay,
you know what I mean by the objection. I mean the case that the attorneys general were bringing, and what was the Supreme Court's response?
The case itself hung on the individual mandate, which was stripped out of law when Congress passed the Trump tax scam at the end of 2017. While they were at it, they stripped away the mandate, which mandated that every American get insurance or pay a fee. So once that went away, that set up this court case in which they're challenging the constitutionality of the entire law, saying that once the mandate was stripped, then the entire law needed to go away. And the Supreme Court kind of laughed that out of the House. But they didn't rule on the merits of the case. What they did in this 7-2 ruling was they said there was no standing, that that having a zero penalty causes no harm. So nobody is harmed and can challenge this law in court. And if you read the tea leaves with these 3 court cases, the Supreme Court seems to be saying that they are getting kind of fed up with these challenges, because 7-2 is pretty convincing.
Yeah, I mean, to get 7-2, you have, I think, Brett Kavanaugh voted this way, and, right? And I think the new Amy Coney Barrett voted this way. And so the Supreme Court is really starting to say something very clear to the people who bring these constant objections to the Affordable Care Act. And it raises an interesting question for the possibilities legally and politically for additional healthcare reform. At least it does to me. I look at this and I see, first of all, on the Democratic Party side, there is nobody that I'm aware of in the Democratic Party leadership, elected officials, who doesn't want to preserve and expand at a minimum what we've got. In other words, whether it's public option or other alternatives. You have President Biden on the record for that. You have pretty much every senator and member of the House that I know of on the record for that. Of course, you have others, more attuned to what people like me have been pushing, Medicare for all and so on. But no matter what the kind of continued and expanded role for healthcare coverage is in this country at the federal level, because these cases involve federal legislation, it seems, I don't know, Laura, tell me, I don't know if I'm being overly optimistic, or it seems to me as if there's a message here that says the legal obstacles people have been concerned about may not be as daunting as we've all thought.
Well, it feels like we get one shot every decade or so to do something about healthcare. And in 2009, we had, a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president. So we finally had all the pieces in place to do something, just like we had briefly in 92, I believe, and before the 94 Republican Revolution flipped Congress. But right now, we're also sort of in that moment in that it's a 50-50 Senate. So it's very tough. But there is the possibility of doing reform. And right now, there's a whole bunch of things being talked about. I don't think anything is solidified, but we'll see in the next few weeks what the infrastructure bills finally look like. But some of the things being talked about are lowering the cost of prescription drugs,
right,
expanding Medicare to people age 60, expanding Medicare to cover vision and dental and hearing, doing something about the over 2 million Americans that are caught in the Medicaid gap because their Republican states didn't expand Medicaid. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on the table, and we'll see what winds up being served as the infrastructure packages.
I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, Laura, Laura Packard, sort of philosophical question too about healthcare activism, because it's an issue I'm very involved in as well, and have been for a long time. And I worked in the health insurance industry before that for years. And one of the things I struggle with is incremental versus systemic change, right? And I find that when I go out to make the case for systemic change, sometimes I get pushback from people who think it needs to be incremental only. And sometimes I get pushback from people when I point out that incremental change is a good thing, because at least then there's less suffering and more people have more coverage for more things, even if it's not as extensive coverage as as I might have wanted or whatever. So I find that activism in healthcare versus activism in certain other issues, it sometimes feels like an obstacle course, because, and I feel that the solution is more unity and more collaboration from the people who have different visions of what the ultimate system should look like. So I guess my philosophical question is, A, do you run into that as well or not? And B, if you do you have any thoughts about it?
Well, I think there are issues sometimes with people that want all or nothing. I would love an entire loaf, but sometimes I will settle for half a loaf that helps people as opposed to no loaves at all. And healthcare reform is really hard. Clinton can tell you all about that. Obama too. Just how hard it was to get something even in the same zip code as universal health care.
Right.
And one of the things Obama had to do was he had to pick his battles. Like he didn't battle pharma. He just let pharma take what they wanted. He battled the insurers. And this year, Colorado and Nevada both passed state public options, or rather something akin to a public option, something delivered by private insurance, but mandated to be cheaper than existing insurance policies. And those were big, big fights. In Colorado, I read recently that this was the most lobbied against bill in history. And this was not even that revolutionary a bill. Where it turned out is it mandates insurance companies offer cheaper insurance policies, but it is not government healthcare by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
So And still, they dumped millions. I got postcards in the mail telling me about how terrible this was going to be, just ridiculous sums of money. And so that just goes to show how hard it is to get even half a loaf. And that's something to consider for the people that say, I want everything or bust. Well, bust is a lot more likely.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. And what I find I have to do, because I've been through the healthcare mill myself, because I worked in that industry, I really know the numbers, the underwriting, and all that. And I have feelings, right? I'm a human being, and there's a part of me that gets really feisty and says, I don't want to give people's money to rapacious insurance companies. And I feel that way. And I feel a lot of the reform we get does that. And I feel ultimately, the Affordable Care Act does it. On the other hand, I know that people who would have died didn't die. I know that for a fact. And to me, right, you are a perfect example. Your story is such a compelling story, and it's a classic example of, and we're very glad you're here. And it's a classic example of that. So to me, I just feel I'm very sure of my ideas, but I'm not so sure that I'm willing to bet your life on it or a stranger's life on it. And so I walk through this contradiction every day. And maybe that's just the political life. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that most Americans want everybody to have healthcare. And they want everybody to have healthcare that is cheap and or free, that's paid through taxes or some other means. Like, I think everybody's there, but how do we get there from here is the really, really hard part. And it's easier for me to see how we get to the destination by taking small steps than for us to jump there. If somebody has a plan, like a realistic plan to completely transform our healthcare industry, to change our entire healthcare system, I would love to hear it. How we get that through a House with, I think, 4 seats, a Senate that's 50-50, and Biden to sign it. I would love to hear that plan.
This is, I thought that Senator Warren had a pretty good 4-year plan. And, when we think about Medicare itself having been created in 1 year, we come up with a plan administratively and financially to do it. In terms of the politics, I've thought a lot about this. And on the one hand, you have to present the vision in order to create the political support for it. And the vision has to be clear and simple. But on the other hand, you have to be prepared to do what you need to do in the meantime. What I've come to, actually, and you may disagree with this, but I'm just going to throw it out, Laura Packard, is that I do not think the Affordable Care Act will ever evolve into Medicare for all. Without some kind of major shift along the way that says, okay, now the private insurers can step aside. But I do think that as we save lives by expanding the Affordable Care Act, we make more people aware the government is a benevolent force in their healthcare and their safety and their lives. And that, more than anything else, lays the groundwork for deeper transformation in the future. But that's my thought. What's yours?
Well, I would like to see both parties being serious about healthcare. And the problem is when there's only one party that is actually trying to do something about it, it gets really hard in a country that is roughly divided. So I wish and I hope that Republicans start working on their side of the table and get their people to be serious about this. 2017, the entire year was full of Republicans not being serious about healthcare. They were designing their plans on a bar napkin at last call. Each plan they came up with was worse, it left more millions vulnerable. So I think it's going to be hard to come up with a transformational system when half of our country, half of our leadership has checked out on the issue.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we have time to go into it, but I've long felt that when people talk about the 1950s and how the two parties worked together by debating the issues, I think those days are over because the Republicans aren't serious, and the real debate is between moderate Democrats and left Democrats. That's kind of taking the role of what people used to imagine that Republicans and Democrats did, because the Republicans have checked out. So now, I mean, like I debated. A Democratic economist now has a very senior role in the administration about Medicare for all. And to me, it felt like that's the debate we would have had between, I don't know, Eisenhower's person and Adlai Stevenson's person in 1956. And I hope we could get back to a point where that's the conversation the country is having, not about whether to do it, but how to do it. So, any closing thoughts before I leave you or you leave me, Laura?
Well, there are so many different working models of healthcare. We don't have to be Canada. We don't have to be England. We could be France. We could be Switzerland. We could be Taiwan. We could be Japan. There are all these different countries that have different balances of private insurers, public insurers, public delivery of healthcare, private delivery of healthcare. Like every country has a different mix, but the key element in all of their systems is they're not allowing people to profit off of basic healthcare. If Absolutely. They have private insurance companies, those private insurance companies can make profits off of extras, but not off of basic healthcare, because the problem with the incentives in this country is insurance companies make more money by denying people care they need. And so that's the problem that needs to be fixed with however our healthcare system runs.
Bingo. Laura Packard, I could not have said it any better or nearly as well. So again, thanks for following these issues with us. Thanks for updating us. Laura Packard, again, is the founder of Healthcare Voices. She's the executive director of Get America Covered. She's a healthcare activist, and we're proud to say a friend of this program. So, Laura, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back after this. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.